All right. Hey, so the snowpocalypse did not keep us away. Yeah. Oh, that was a letdown, wasn't it? All right. Hey, thank you guys for coming out. We got a full program today. My name is Jason Fellman. I work with Vortex Magazine and Music Portland to produce these 3 or 4 times a year, these free all-ages sessions where we bring experts up and we have a lot of Q&A and discussions about various elements of the music business. And the idea here is the ultimate goal is to empower musicians to be the master of your own destiny. That's the goal. We're very much in sort of a DIY. You kind of have to make your own steam kind of industry these days. And so that's what these sessions are really all about. Before we get into the panelists, I want to make sure that all the musicians in town know about Music Portland. And so we happen to have the executive director of Music Portland, Mara McLaughlin, is here. So she is going to give us an update on what's going on with Music Portland. And I really, please encourage you to get information about MP before you go and to sign up as a member. I think you'll be blown away with what's going on. Why don't you give them a quick update?
Yes. Hey, y'all. So Music Portland is... How many people have heard about Music Portland?
Yeah.
Good. We're about a year in, with a couple of years in advance, figuring stuff out. It's a grassroots trade organization. And we don't do things like promote shows. You guys are literally on your own with your talent and learning things like this to be better at touring and booking. But you guys live within an infrastructure. You live within a city. And that city has been making bank on music. And music hasn't enjoyed any of that prosperity. We don't have policies that support what we do. Venues have to fight to survive. Musicians have no assistance, unlike the traditional arts. So what we're really doing is trying to gather everybody together and advocate for music, both as an industry and a cultural asset, because it's time that we got our due. Some of the things that have been happening, it's been really exciting. We just got musician loading zones at the first 16 music venues. And if you go to Music Portland, sign up. As an artist, you just need to spend about 1.5 minutes doing a profile that gives us the demographic data that we need to be able to represent you to City Hall, to policymakers, to corporate entities, so that they invest in music and start to support the ecosystem.
What is the cost to musicians for all of this?
Free.
Very good price.
We thought about making it what you get in your tip jar on a Wednesday night, but we figured free would probably be a little bit more. So, musician loading zones. We're also working with the Lloyd Center and working on a project to develop out about 60 below market rate rehearsal spaces. We know that's something everybody needs. We are working against City Hall with the help of Commissioner Fish, Commissioner Udaley, and definitely Commissioner Hardesty to stop what's a really poor idea of placarding venues that will basically put a big X and almost guarantee demolition on 30 different music venues. So there's a lot of things that you guys need to focus on your music. You need representation that is focused on supporting you in the context of this place. So come over, spend 1.5 minutes, fill out a profile, get us some data, and tell all your friends, if we stand together, we don't make a monoculture, we're gonna be independent together and keep bumping life and music in Portland. So thanks a lot.
Hey, thanks so much for everything you're doing there, Mara. So, moving on. Real quick, also, you notice some cameras. See the fellas at the back there. I want to give a shout out to Audio Globe, who is here once again webcasting this for anyone who isn't able to see it at home. For musicians who are looking to get into the world of streaming, I highly recommend that you talk to these folks at some point tonight. They're on the cutting edge of what's going on and also working on some really interesting ways to monetize your shows using streaming. So Audio Globe for that. Also, really want to thank the Doug Fur for continuing to let us do these here, man. We really appreciate that. Absolutely. Okay, so we have 2 different panels today on the topic of touring, booking, and promoting. First half of the panel, we're going to hear from some artists who have been doing some touring and can speak very directly to the artist experience. And the second half of the panel is going to be focused on the quote-unquote business folks. So talking a little bit more on the agency side and talent reps and that type of thing. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring up our musicians. Let's start out here. We've got Sarah Vitorp and Scott Gilbert from Fox and Bones. You guys want to come up? And we've also got Eli Howard from Brass Tacks, our country friends from Malala. Come on up, guys. There you go. All right. So before we get started, I'm going to have you guys each speak to a little bit about your recent experience over the last few years with touring in particular, because that's I know something a lot of folks are really interested about. So I'm going to start with you guys. Maybe just tell them a little bit about what you guys have been up to, and so just to help give some context to where you're coming from.
Yeah, so it was a big goal of ours as a band to be full-time musicians, and so we made that switch in February, which meant we were going to have to be on the road a lot. And so in the past year, we've probably spent 6 or 7 months, on the road, and the rest of the time playing regionally around Portland, Oregon, trying to play 4 to 5 shows a week.
Yeah, there's definitely a little bit. It's a little scary when you make the jump, but it kind of lights a fire under your ass. There's no other option.
You have to play.
And so that really makes you buckle down and work. It opens up the whole day so that you're able to put that work in, and so that you don't have to split your time between another job. But it really does help. That fear, that fear of being homeless helps.
You guys have done some international touring as well, if I understand correctly, yeah?
We have, yes, yeah. A couple European tours under our belt.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So, Eli, Brass Tacks, and you guys just recently went on your first national tour
Yes.
after your album release this summer. So maybe just tell them a little bit about the scope of that tour and how frequently you were playing.
Well, it started the summer before we flew to North Carolina, and we did a week out there. So we basically went from one side of the country to the other with no in between, and then we just decided shortly after that, it's like, all right, next summer we're gonna quit making excuses. We're just gonna do this. And so we planned out about every 4 to 5 hours of driving, we would have a show, and we went all the way to North Carolina and South Carolina, and then turned back around. We did 20 shows in 30 days.
Yeah, excellent. So that's actually a good segue to the first question. And by the way, the format here, very loose. So we have an audience mic over here. You can go up at any time and ask questions. So usually the way these things go is I'll kind of catalyze the conversation a little bit with a few questions. But once we get rolling, it tends to just kind of flow from the audience. So definitely don't be shy to come up to the mic, and feel free to ask questions at any time. So you mentioned that you guys took the plunge. I'm going to go back to you, Eli. Well, what was it that ultimately led to the decision to say, how'd you know that now was the time? If an artist saying, hey, should we be going on tour? What was the catalyst that said, okay, it's time for us to do this?
Once we started drawing crowds around our hometown, we realized, like, all right, this is, it's not just us that think this is good. People are showing up, and they're showing up consistently. And so we decided, you can only do so much in this area, and the people from North and South Carolina, where we went the first time, aren't going to fly out to Oregon and watch us. We have to come to them. And
it's interesting, too, that you bring up a really good point, which is that ultimately it was done at a time where you already knew you could be successful in your own market, so you sort of had a proof of concept before trying to take it on the road. How about you guys? You just made the switch to full-time musician. That's a pretty big switch. How'd you know that this was the time to do that?
I think personally, I've noticed that through life, the more time and attention you put towards something, the better that you get at it. No matter how, no matter what way you're practicing it, the more time you put into something, the better it'll be. And we were watching, or at least I personally was watching, and showing that I was putting so much time into another job or another activity, and if I could redirect that energy into the music, that it would give us a better shot of actually making that dream a reality. And that was what kind of turned me onto that. But Sarah?
Yeah, for us, we kind of did it backwards. When we first met and started playing together, we didn't really know quite exactly what the vision was going to be. But Scott had a very clear idea that he really wanted to get us to Europe. And so we met with the booking agent, and we did the whole thing. And we planned, within our first month of being a band, we had a tour to Europe planned for, 7 months later. And so then you just have to be ready to tour. And we had to spend those next 7 months playing as much as possible and making sure that things were dialed in order to go all the way across the world.
So I have a feeling that I'm not the only person with this question. So how in the world does one go about booking a European tour? Like, how do you even do that?
Oh, we did
did
very
not.
little, very little.
Yeah.
Dominic Schmidt, who was part of the Future of What podcast on Getting Paid, he runs a company, Roll Music, and they bring a lot of acts from Portland, and they do all the booking, and they handle all the the travel and everything. And he's a fantastic resource in person to work with, and I highly recommend reaching out to him if you have any questions on that.
In getting signed up with him, what did that process look like? I mean, I think that everybody would love to just go to somebody like Dominic and say, "Hey, book me a tour," but obviously there was more to it than that. What I get without Dominic here to speak to that. What was that? What did that look like when you went to him? How'd that conversation go?
It was in a way, it was like a job interview. We went out, we met with them, and we had to, make sure that we kind of vibe together. Because you want to work with people that you trust. You want to work with people that are well balanced and
believe in your music. You definitely don't want to hire a booking agent that just is trying to make money off of you, or hoping to just send you out into the abyss. Like, you really want somebody who loves your music, because at the end of the day, they're the ones pitching you to venues and doing all your PR. And so you want to really make sure that they understand your vision and they believe in what you're doing, and they're just not looking for a paycheck. And with Dominic, what we did, and what I would encourage anyone to do if they're interested, is just send an email to the company. You can look them, I think rollamusic.com is their website. You can send them an email, just say that you heard about them through this, and submit your music. And that's essentially, he'd met him before, and we had friends who had worked with him, and so it was kind of nice to have that in. But we just sent him, we had one video and pretty much one song out there, and we sent him that, and he was like, "Yeah, let's meet." So yeah, just.
By the way, I will, as someone who does a lot of booking, I will tell you that one can spend a lot of time on promo materials and videos and other things, and I find that most of the booking that really takes place, it happens with that one piece of content. So I think it's just something to think about, is that you're better off having one killer video, one killer demo, whatever it is, versus a whole bunch of kind of volume kind of material. So Eli, your experience in booking this was quite a bit different. You guys were a little more of a DIY kind of thing. How was that process for you guys?
Long.
Yeah. Well, walk us through what that looks like. So I've contacted all the agencies, and I'm just not getting any bites. So you know what? Screw it. I'm doing this myself, because that's what I got to do.
Yeah, I realize if you want something, if you got to just depend on yourself, not everyone else. So. When we went to North Carolina the first time, I don't know how, but a venue from right at the coast in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, emailed us, and I didn't know how to tell them, like, "Hey, man, we flew out here. It cost us a fortune to do this. I can't come, we can't come down and play your venue." About every 2 months, he would email us, "Hey, I'm checking up on this," and I didn't know how to tell him, "Hey, sorry, dude, like, I would love to play there." And he did one last time before the end of the year. He said, "I'm checking up on this for the last time." I said, "Hey, I'm going to answer you now." And he told us what date he wanted us, and that was the date that we had to be at our most eastern point. And I just planned from Oregon to South Carolina and back. I knew what day I had to be here, and so then I just planned what day I needed to leave Oregon. And
so when you, assuming most of this was done by email.
Almost, yeah, entirely.
And so how did you go about even determining like where to play? You're looking at a map, and I'm thinking, I know I've got an endpoint. I got to figure out where to play. What did that?
I would look at bands in town, and I would just, like, if I wanted to drive 5 hours from Malala, I would try to look at a city, and I would see where other musicians were playing. And then I would, on down the line till we got to a point where, all right, I have a guaranteed, we are already playing here in South Carolina. I don't need to look for a show here because it's already there. And a lot of times getting told no or just not getting answers back at all, you had to be very persistent. Usually you don't get an answer back on the first time.
How many no's do you think you were getting on average before you got to a yes? How many, the no to yes ratio?
I bet I sent out close to 300 emails for this.
For how many dates?
20.
So yeah, a lot of hustle. I think you got some feedback on this as well.
Persistence is definitely key. I know something that helps us out a lot when we're planning tours is that you look for a place where you know someone. You look for somewhere that there's either family or friends or that have a couch or 2 couches. And once you secure those couches, then you know you have a place to stay in that town. And then you can kind of look in the town and find shows in that area.
And you can rely on people that you know for venue recommendations, sometimes house concerts. Like our tours in the U.S. are entirely DUI as well. DUI.
Whoa.
Now that Freudian slip.
Uh-oh.
That too, maybe.
Is that foreshadowing?
DIY. I thought it was even hard to say the second time. But yeah, and so we've done some really long ones where we're like, we just got to get out there and go. And so planning those places where, starting with house concerts, if you are a quieter band, it's really easy to do that. And then from there, just planning, because saving money on the road by not having to buy a hotel and not having to sleep in your van is awesome. It's really helpful. And so that's been a thing that's, as far as routing our tour, that's where we start.
And persistence is definitely key as well. I know Sarah does a lot of the booking, and she fires off 20 emails a day, and you just kind of get into the habit of it. And if you can do that every day, you will get those
Such
responses.
a dopamine boost too when you do get one back. You're like,
I haven't read any emails yet.
I try to spend a minimum half hour to an hour in front of my computer every night after work, just so I can feel like I'm doing something, whether it's looking for new venues or trying to book places or something that can help me down the road. If I can spend that, I feel like I've done something.
Based on your all's experience so far, I think one of the biggest concerns that people have about touring is the expense. Am I going to even be able to break even? Can I do this? What happens when my van breaks down? Are we breaking even at this point on these tours?
No. And don't go into it expecting to make money either. At least your first go around. I think that's money's cool and everything. I think if you're gonna focus your money anywhere, focus your band as a whole as your most important thing. The van, the hotel rooms, the stuff like that. Don't ask yourself, what am I getting out of this? Make sure your band is taken care of first. Like we did this, when we did that tour for 30 days, I myself didn't make a lot of money. I didn't walk away with a lot, but I did not have to buy a single gallon of gas. I did not have to buy a hotel room out of my own pocket. The band paid for that because the band was taken care of first. Any money that came from show merches, it was number one, the band needs to be taken care of first.
Yeah.
I definitely think that's true. You can make money on the road, though. It is possible, and it's a little easier for us just because we have less members, and so we can split everything evenly. But if you do plan where you're staying, if you do kind of have your routes, and you figure out how to work as many nights as you can, because there are 7 nights in a week, and yeah, the weekends tend to be more of an upbeat time, but if you can figure out a way for whatever your genre of music to find gigs on Mondays and Tuesdays, maybe that requires having it be a more relaxed set or a house show. Or if you're a choir to music, figuring out a way to jazz it up a little bit on the weekends, then you can work every night, and then if you do that, it makes it easier to come home in the black.
Definitely. And, as to what Eli said, I think it's a really important thing to have the expectation of going on your first tour and maybe taking some gigs that they're just offering you tips. I think it's really important to not be too self-important at the very first time and just go out and play as much as you can. Just take the gigs, say yes to everything. And then from there, you get to kind of work up, because then, if you do really well at a non-paid venue, for example, but there might be another venue in town that now that you've played in their city, they'll actually pay you to play. And so it's building those things up. And also, you kind of touched on this, but having a diversity of the type of set that you can offer, like really being able, you're an entertainer. So at the end of the day, sometimes it's not all about you and your music. Sometimes, you play some covers and you take some requests to get tips. And that's a really great way that we've made extra money, is by offering something to the audience that they'll pay for.
It's also a great way to bring people in, because a lot of the time you're playing in situations where they don't know anything about you, you don't know anything about them, and every once in a while having a way to draw them in, draw people in.
What do you want to hear? Let me play it for you. And then they're like, oh, now I feel connected to you.
And then now that you have the connection, then you can, start introducing them to your music, and then they're more receptive because now you have a bond, and that helps bring in more tips, that helps get more gigs, and so it's these little interactions that if you kind of do everywhere, everything starts to get a little easier.
It's interesting, that's another good segue, which is that, so just when one gets a tour booked, that's just the beginning of it, right? So, I mean, ostensibly, the reason you go out on tour, at least initially, is not to make money. The idea is to develop your following, to get your name out across the country, across the world, whatever your scope of promotion is. So, how are you guys finding it getting people to these shows? I mean, obviously, locally, everybody knows who you are. You can pack your rooms, but all of a sudden, you're going into these venues where you're playing in the city, South Dakota for the first time, right? So what is that? What are some of the things that you guys have been able to do to get people out?
Every Monday, my band would sponsor an ad. Like if we would post our shows for what our schedule was Monday through Friday, and we would sponsor that, and we would target those areas and find common interests, or if they like this style of music or whatever, it would go, hopefully force feed its way into their news feed, which it did, and we would hope for the best.
I'm assuming the results are probably mixed depending on the day of the week and the town you're in and all that.
Absolutely,
I mean, so many variables,
absolutely.
yeah.
There are definitely a few good tricks. House shows that's one of the biggest things, because then you got a bed, you're fed, they bring the audience, and so if you can find a way for whatever genre you are to kind of fit into house shows, and you can, even if you're a rock band, you can kind of move and have a little bit more acoustic set and kind of fit to the environment.
Some bands do want rock shows at their house too.
Yeah,
that's
true.
a real thing. Yeah,
Absolutely. So that's definitely one way. Also, so you find these shows in towns when you go to them, that there's kind of like one night there's a pint night at a bar, and you find that, and that's the night that everyone's at that bar. And so if you, in your research, find those nights that kind of seem to be the special music nights.
Venues that have a natural draw.
Yeah.
Wineries, breweries, stuff like that.
There you
Really
go.
great.
That's what I'm saying.
And just show up at the places where people are already going to be, or there's some places that'll have like songwriter nights on Mondays that like it has an established thing, and then sometimes you're playing. We've definitely played gigs where we're at some like college coffee house where everyone's studying, and they're like, "Why are you here?" We're trying to study, and that's just real.
It is very, very, very important, though, that not all gigs are going to be packed. Some of them are going to be nearly empty. But if there's one person in that audience, it is the utmost importance that you still play the best that you can play, because that one person could be your next big fan.
They could be a future. We've had a lot of people like that who have just been like, "Oh, you should have had more people here, but I'm so glad I was here." And then the next time we're staying with them, and they're, hosting a house show. And so making those connections, and to bridge on to that, connect with your audience, like stick around at the merch table after, talk to people, let them come ask you questions, be personable on stage, because people want to feel like you're approachable. They don't, it's hard when you see a band up on a stage and you're like, oh, that's so cool. Like, I'm not going to talk to them because it's awkward. If you make yourselves really approachable, people absolutely love making that connection with you. And once you've made that connection, you have them for life.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning too. I mean, this is whether it's a local show or a tour or whatever. It's like every single show you play, there should always be some plan in place for capturing fans. And what I mean by that is whether it's an email list sign up, encouraging people to get connected with you on your socials, whatever it's going to take. You go through all this effort and expense and time and blood, sweat, and tears to go on these tours, and so you want to make sure that you're meeting that goal of picking up fans. Another thing I was wondering about is, did you guys ever find yourself in situations or opportunities where you were piggybacking on other shows? So I know a lot of times people say, well, hey, if you can get an opening slot for band X, it's a built-in audience. Was that something you guys were able to kind of come up with in your touring experience?
Yes, we opened for Corey Smith in Louisiana, and our friends at Piedmont Boys from South Carolina, they're a very big draw in that area, so we got to do several shows with them, which was a ball.
One of the things I've noticed that you guys do really well, and I know you guys do this when people come into town as well, is I noticed you network a lot with national artists who are touring. So that's another thing just to kind of keep in mind, is that anytime you get an opportunity to connect with a touring artist, that's a golden relationship, because sometimes that means an opening show. I know you guys with Shane Smith and connect with those guys, and I know it's led to, and it's interesting too because, like, so this is an anecdote from our country festival. So I produced a country festival, and Eli's band Brass Tacks played, and they really did a great job of networking with the national artists who were in town. So all of a sudden, Shane Smith and the Saints, who's one of the hottest bands on this particular circuit, he's out there wearing Brass Tacks merch.
Hey, I'm wearing his shirt right now too.
Hey, Shane, heads up. And so
Welcome, Shane.
So it came full circle because then all of a sudden, Eli's been doing his due diligence and his networking. Eli hits me up and says, "Hey, Shane Smith is coming to Portland, right? Any way we could get on that bill?" Well, it turns out I know the promoter. I email the promoter. I say, "Hey, there's this great band, Brass Tacks, thanks. And Shane Smith wears their merch when he plays." And now all of a sudden they're opening for Shane Smith when they're coming back into Portland. So it's amazing how some of these things that happen, they happen here, they happen out on the road, and then they come back home. The other fascinating thing about promoting is that when you're out on playing out of town, the value you get back home is amazing because it changes the perception of your hometown audience when they see you as a national touring act. So don't underestimate the value back home for being out on the road. So, by the way, I'll remind you, too, if anybody has questions, we do have a mic over there, so if those questions are percolating, feel free to step up. Let's talk about pitfalls a little bit, because I know that there are a lot of romantic ideas about touring. Yeah, we're going to go hit the road. Awesome. And then you get out there, and maybe it's not exactly like that. What are the things that maybe people don't expect about touring that they really ought to know before they hit the road?
You
guys are still together, so that's a good sign.
Choose your words wisely, man.
Well, think back to the one time that you took like the longest road trip ever, and it seemed like it took forever to get there, and then you just do that every day.
Yeah, I think, especially, I don't know, people that are health conscious, like knowing that like there's not, like what we have here in Portland food-wise is not in most of the country. And so you're really like, you're kind of scrounging for like good places to eat, and you kind of, that definitely makes things difficult. There's definitely some nights where we're playing where we don't have anywhere to stay, and we're staying in like the world's worst cockroach motel and just like barely touching the
literally.
sheets. Yeah, we've had all of the
And
like.
if you're vegan,
horrible.
you can't eat the roaches. That's not going to work.
Nope. Yeah.
We had seen a roach in one of the rooms, and we lost it. We couldn't find it. And we're like, all right, I guess we'll just go to sleep. And so I was sitting there, and I looked over, and it was on my shoulder.
He thankfully
like,
didn't
shoo it
tell
away.
me
Yeah.
until the next day that that's what had happened, because I would have just slept in the car.
What's that? It's nothing.
Everything's cool. Yeah, and so I think it's important to know that like there will be crazy stuff that happens, and you really want to be with people that you enjoy, because inevitably at some point you will not enjoy them. But to have the base of just like and shared goals, shared ambitions. That's what has like absolutely kept us together and kept us working through things and working forward, is because we both want the same thing, and like all of these situations are worth it. And if nothing else, it's a great tour story to tell on stage or to write a song about. People love that. And so, we're pretty dumb on tour, and so we just have collected stories about it. And so no matter what's happening can end up being a good thing.
I love the contrast here too, in your situations, because obviously you guys have a very, very, very specific situation, both having a personal relationship and a business relationship, and then you've got the band, the dudes, right, which is that whole other thing, guys in a van, kind of gals in a van.
It's like day one is like the road goes on forever and the party never ends, and like day 20 is like the road goes on forever and the party never ends.
Party. Outside of the sort of interpersonal stuff too, I'm wondering about in terms of details. Getting a little more granular. Are there some things you got to really make sure you double check on, like, oh, we showed up and our hotel room wasn't there, or advancing with venues, like what type of communication you need to keep flowing while you're on the road to keep things moving?
Time changes. There's like an hour difference between Nashville and Knoxville, and we had like a 12 o'clock show, and we had to remember like we're losing an hour, so we need to get up. I mean, it's like things you don't think about. We're in the same state. Why would the time change? So like just even like planning, little routing, things like that. Yeah.
I'd say always keep communications open with venues. Like, don't just assume things are happening like the day before. Just like, hey, this is when we're planning to get there. Because then they can like spring on you any last minute things that they didn't tell you.
Shows details you might not have perfectly read the first email.
By the way, I think the obvious one is that keep your vehicle in good working condition. This is you hear it. I mean, even at the highest level, you see artists. Well, and the axle broke on the van. We can't move on the semi. You know what I mean? So I mean, mechanical problems happen at every level, but certainly the fewer resources you have to deal with them, the more important that becomes. Do you guys have any sort of interesting experiences in terms of outside of driving each other nuts, potentially in the van, or did everything felt like everything's pretty smooth?
That 15-passenger van becomes about a Yugo after 3 weeks. I mean, those walls get a lot smaller as time goes on. You gain a whole new level of respect for your privacy because you're 5 guys in one vehicle. If you want to go somewhere, you're at the mercy of everyone else unless it's in walking distance. So,
having now gone through this experience multiple times, you guys, what are you going to do differently the next time you go out on the road?
Yikes.
I think we're always kind of, just assessing what's going on. One thing that we've really learned, especially because I know a lot of people, just by nature of you being here, you're probably a very overambitious musician. I think we all, if you're thinking about the business side at all, you probably are very ambitious. And because of that, we've booked sometimes where for example, there was one European tour where the first 14 days we played every night in a different city. And taking the time for yourself to relax and have a night off is absolutely paramount. And it's something you forget because you're like, oh, I'm only playing a couple hours a night. I can handle that. Like, let's just do it. And so over time, we've really learned to not only take the days off, but to really sink into them and actually do nothing. Sometimes you're like, I'm in a new city. I should be exploring. That's me. I'm like, I should be doing all these things and putting it on my Instagram. And it's like, no, maybe just watch Netflix all day and like rest your mind so that,
chill.
You're expending a lot of emotional energy being on stage, talking to people, promoting yourself, even just driving all day, it expends a lot of energy. And so taking time and finding things that you enjoy on the road that don't have anything to do with music.
Absolutely, and to piggyback on that a little bit, like don't be afraid to treat yourself a little bit here and there. I know our first tours we wouldn't like book a hotel for ourselves because we just were so conscious of the bottom
Stay
line.
in a hostel or something, yeah.
Yeah, and if you're starting to feel that mental like raggedness, you just have to. Sometimes you just need a safe space for yourself to curl up in, and so make sure to treat yourself if you're like. Regardless, like if you're feeling that you need it, because that'll help you do your job better. So your job is to be on stage and to interact and entertain. And if you're not doing that well, then you need to make sure to treat yourself so that you're able to.
Oh yeah, hi. Andre Middleton from Friends of Noise.
All ages.
All ages, yes. A quick question. I got here a little late, but I wanted to get some background on the connection between bookers and circuits. Is there like a website? I mean, how do you know what booker to reach out to or what circuit you may be in? Because that seems like magic to me.
Well, I'm gonna let them answer, but we're gonna want to hit that question again when we get to the biz half of the panel too, because those guys are. But I'm curious if you guys have a take on that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We kind of the role of music thing fell into our lap a little bit, but we're now looking for a booking agency in the U.S. and a lot of it is is that networking piece, asking the people who their booker is and how they worked with them, and especially other people who have the same type of music as you, because it is really important to find a booker who knows your style of music and will book you in the right types of venues. We, for example, the person that we're going to be working with, we found through our PR company, which was kind of a cool thing, and so we had a relationship with them. They were like, oh, we know somebody that would be good for you. But also there's some really cool resources online, like the Indie Bible. You can pay $50 and it gives you a list of like 6,000 booking agencies in the country and a bunch of venue, like 1,500 venues. And, it's radio stations that are accepting submissions, labels that are accepting submissions. And if you have that ambition, I ended up buying the $50 Indie Bible, and then you have this whole database of resource, and you can make a goal to send out 20 emails a day or send out 50 emails a day, and just see if anything bounces back.
I didn't give you a chance to answer the question about what you would do differently, Eli.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got home that I realized how much fun I'd had because we put so much pressure on ourselves. We played 5-6 nights in a row and then would have a day off or 2 days off, and we had no support crew. We don't have roadies. We don't have a merch person. We don't have an extra person to drive when we're tired. So we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, and we didn't really realize that, a lot of people will play music the rest of their lives, and never make it out of their garage doing it. And we're all in our 20s, and we're getting to do something that's really special that I'm never going to forget. But it wasn't until I got home and realized, like, man, I'm not out there anymore, and I'm not having all this fun that I was having. And it was once I got back to reality that I realized exactly how special it was, and the friendships I got to make, and how much stronger the bond between me and my band got to, because we're all really close friends. I love everyone in my band. And I think just being with them every day, every time we get together, some story from our tours come up.
I'm going to reference Shane Smith again, because this guy, they're from Austin, Shane Smith and the Saints. Great band. If you haven't had a chance to catch them, they're going to be in Portland. When is that?
April
show?
11th.
Yes.
The opening band's going to be awesome.
Yeah. This guy.
Get there early.
We got turned on him a while ago, and we first saw him open for the Randy Rogers band at the Crystal Ballroom. And yeah, we were there. And what struck me about that is that the second the show was over, Shane was at the merch booth. And that's, in terms of, like, again, kind of going back to this idea of making sure, and this is any show, right, whether it's a tour or otherwise, like the golden opportunity is to convert, that's the marketing term, to convert the audience into loyal fans. And so that personal connection you make, I think you guys alluded to earlier, even if it's just one person, that one person might be the person who organizes all the parties in the community. So, you just never know. So yeah, definitely making sure that you're, connecting with people at these shows and not just finishing and heading back to the green room and hanging out. And, you can smoke your weed in a little bit, but just, go connect first.
Or if you want to get weird, smoke your weed and then talk to people.
Yeah. Or invite them to smoke with you. And it's all legal here. So I don't know what goes on in Oklahoma. But,
you get arrested.
Yeah.
It's still a felony there, I think.
I hear you do in Idaho, but I don't know. I didn't know about that. All right. Real quick, I just want to make sure, because we're getting close to wrapping up with the artist portion of this panel. I just want to make sure if we have any other questions for these guys. And of course, at the end of all this, we're going to make sure we got time for some networking, so you'll be able to kind of talk to folks one-on-one. But if there are any other questions here, I just want to make sure we give you an opportunity to ask them before we switch gears to the biz panel. Yes.
Did streaming infographics or anything play into where you made your tour?
I think it's really smart to look at that stuff. I don't think for us we've done that, but I think you should.
There's a lot of data that you can find through Spotify or streaming services that show you exactly where people are listening and where there may be more fans.
Yeah, make sure you have like a Spotify for Artists account and your Apple Music account and stuff, because they really do give you a lot of information on there.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I've heard you two refer to the house shows as your bread and butter.
That's true.
How do you make that happen? How do you make a house show profitable?
How do we make them happen at first? You just ask people, and people, it's becoming a thing. And so
Who is people, though?
People, anyone.
Well,
How do you find somebody in Ohio that has a house? Like, how do I get that house show?
So there's a couple ways. So first, we started on our first tour with friends and family, or if we knew we had fans in other places, which, usually if you've got a fan from somewhere, usually they let you know and you're in touch with them. So if you're lucky enough to have that, you start with them. And sometimes it takes some convincing because most people don't quite know what it means. So making sure you're really upfront with and you can decide what your house show looks like. But for us, we say it's free to the host. They ask their guests to bring a suggested donation of $10 to $20. They can do it potluck style, or they can provide for their guests. But we try to make it, easy for hosts to realize they can do it without costing a bunch of money. Now, we've also had people pay us to be at their house, and usually those are people who just are wanting to spend that money on it. But being really upfront with whoever you talk to about what a house show is, what the expectations of them are. We actually made a sheet that we just send to people, like, you're hosting a house show, here's what to know. Beyond that, networking at your shows in Portland, networking when you are on the road, meeting people, and then the next tour, reaching out to them, asking. But also, there are lots of places that have set house concert series. And so a lot of times I'll search online for those. And, we've gotten a couple house concerts through people we don't know at all, that they just bring people to their house every week or every month. And those tend to be pretty good because they kind of have, a built-in audience around that already. But definitely, networking and making those connections with your fans, becoming their friend. That usually is the first thing that leads to a house concert. And then once you're at the house concert, there's a lot of different ways. Sometimes people don't know they're supposed to do the suggested donation, so you can pass a hat during the show. Definitely having lots of different kinds of merch, and that's for any show, having something at every price point, being really creative with what you're offering. Just CDs and t-shirts sometimes doesn't give enough diversification to what you have, and so that's kind of how you can make it profitable. We tend to make most of our money at house shows, though, because people are there ready to spend money. They want, they want to support.
And the intimacy is, I think, something that they love, and that provides, is that direct one-on-one interaction.
Plus, they don't have to go to a bar and pay for their drinks. They're like around people they already know. They're amongst friends. They're in their
pajamas.
living room. Yeah, so it's like a really comfortable, fun way to watch music.
This is actually worth mentioning. There's something to learn here, and it's a little bit weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. So as a festival producer in particular, and to a lesser extent as a concert promoter, what you learn is that alcohol is the currency of live music for 21 and over shows. Now, Andre, I know you're probably gonna hate this, but the reality is that when you're in a show where people are drinking, people's wallets loosen up later in the night. So I'm just saying, you think about when you're asking for stuff, because it's just the reality of it, man. The closer you get to the tap, people will hem and haw about a $5 cover at a fucking show, right? And then they'll come in there and put $50 on their credit card. You're like, what? But that's the way it works, you know what I mean? So you just have to be cognizant of that and understand, where the buying occurs. Another question.
Howdy, y'all. I was wondering if you could speak to making records and how that kind of plays into the touring, but also how that plays into your kind of like PR strategy. Y'all mentioned working with a PR company and kind of how all those pieces fit together in terms of releasing music.
Well, Eli, you guys, your tour was on the heels of an album release, if I remember correctly.
Shortly after, yeah. We just got so many songs stacked up that we just said, we got to record these, we got to do something with them. And so we recorded an album, and once the album was out, I was all right, now people got to hear it. We weren't really strategic about it. It's just we had our singer, Andy, is just a songwriting powerhouse, and we just had so much music stacked up that we had to exhaust it somehow, and we'd been sitting on our first EP for over a year, and we said it's time to go back in, and we're at the point now where we're getting the wheels turning again for another album just because we keep stacking up songs. He's writing them faster than the band can learn them.
Did you find it advantageous as you were out there putting together and promoting your tour to say, hey, we got a new album, we're on the road? Was that a factor for you guys, or not as much?
Not really, no.
So for us, we try not to go back to a place unless we have something new to sell, because I think it's really important. If you keep going back to the same place and selling the same CD, you're not going to make the same profits from merch. And so we definitely try to, to go out with something new. Even sometimes it's just a T-shirt, but keeping yourselves relevant, recording new stuff, because once you start making these fans, they want to hear from you and they want to hear new stuff. And so it is kind of important to, and we, you can do, for example, we'll release an album, we'll be on tour in Europe, that'll be the new thing, but then we can still go on another whole tour of the US on that same album and it's still new.
And content is king these days, so from a PR company perspective, like having, you got to give them something to promote. They can only promote the same thing so many times, so you have to, if you can keep creating content, then you have something for them to promote, and for yourselves, and it's just good to spread the music too. So once
all these new audience
once
members,
you have a new,
you want them to have new stuff all the time.
Hey, this is Tom from Audio Globe. I got a quick question for you guys. You guys mentioned house shows, and that's really inspiring to us. Can you talk about maybe the ratio of house shows to basically shows in venues, and how that affects the way you schedule your performances?
Sure. Yeah, so I would say maybe a third of our tour in the US is house shows. Not so much in Europe. We've only done one over there. But yeah, I would say a third. And we like to offer house shows to our fans first before we start booking, because we find that, some people, it's very important that they have it on a weekend, or it's very important that they have it on a specific date. And so we kind of give them first dibs because it is the most lucrative thing for us. And then we start to plan the tour around those. But yeah, does that answer your question? Cool.
So we got Moses Barrett over here, who actually his band Junebugs just got off European tour. We should probably should have had you up here actually, but fire away.
I wanted to know if you'd feel comfortable sharing that one sheet for house shows.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
yours, 'cause
absolutely.
that would be super cool to look at.
Absolutely. We can post it on the page for this event.
Yeah, we'll get it to Vortex.
Or yeah, that too.
And then I have one quick statement. When we're talking about routing, Reverb Nation is super lame, but it does give you a list of bands that are operating in the area, and that's where I go first. Where it's just like, what one band out of this list of 10 do I actually like? Where are they playing? Talk to those venues. Also talk to that band. Be like, hey, you want
Totally.
to split a show? Blah, blah, blah.
Instagram too. We found a couple bands just randomly through Instagram, and now we have a standing relationship of playing with them, and it's awesome. It's really fun to have that.
That something Moses said made me think about this too, and I think this question came up a little bit online in terms of how do you get people to listen to your music when they have no idea who you are? How do you get people to come to your show when they have no idea who you are? And the general conventional wisdom on this is to connect yourself with other artists. I know it sounds obvious, but I have to say it. So like, hey, imagine if you see an ad that says, hey, if you like band X, Y, and Z, you're going to love this show. That might get your attention if someone's coming through town, as opposed to if you are just advertising, hey, Brass Tacks, coming to Carolina. If you've never been there, just saying your band is playing there means nothing to anyone. So your ads, if you're going to take the time to spend money on some ads in the local market, which you probably are going to have to do, just make sure there's a hook in there. Realize that these people have no idea who you are. So the messaging that you put out there has to reflect, some kind of interest-generating content. Speaking of content, real quick, I just wanted to mention this. One of the cool things about these programs that we do is that we always have a companion piece in Vortex magazine, and there is one on this very topic. I can't see on what page it is because my eyes are no good, but you can pick up a Vortex. They're free, so we got them over there and we got them over here as well, and just a really great hub for all things local music, and of course the website as well is a great place to get content.
I think we have one more question over here.
Yes.
Hi. It's actually not a question, but there's been a lot of talk about house shows. I've actually never done, I've done a couple house shows, but just locally. I haven't done a house show tour. But have any of you read Ari Herstand's How to Make It in the New Music Business? Have you guys read it?
Ari's a stud. I subscribe to his blog. I haven't read the book.
Heard great things.
Yeah, he has that book. He has a whole chapter on house shows, and he actually talks about what you talk about is the whole sheet. Like, he has a template. You guys should definitely share yours, but there's also a template in his book. They have it at Powell's, and I listened to the audiobook, but that's Ari Herstand, and it's How to Make It in the New Music Business. So just wanted to
Ari
share that.
Herstand, if you haven't gotten hip to him, he's just a really sharp blogger and sort of the de facto voice for DIY musicians these days around social media sphere.
Do you have time for one more?
We do.
Hi, I'm Tave Fashe Drake of Girl Haggard. We're the all-female Merle Haggard tribute.
That's awesome.
And also The Adventures of Chicken and Dumpling. And we're a two-piece with guests like zany stuff and sort of 30s style music, etc. So what I'm wondering, we've done some touring, and how do you know, I put this on the web or the discussion group, but I'm going to ask it out in case you don't get to those. When you have been touring and when you have had national acts or other places talk to you about wanting to have you play more, how do you know when to make that jump to get a booker or promoter or a manager? How often are people doing that these days? And are those actually positions that people hold that are reputable people that you can trust?
I'll take that one.
Okay, thanks.
My take on this, and I'm fairly adamant about this, is that you should go as far as you can on your own. Mainly because when you get into the system of the industry, the more self-sufficient you are, the more leverage you're going to have. I will say that, and we'll get into this because we're going to bring our booking agents up here in a minute, is that you will reach a point where you got to have them. You know what I mean? And it is a huge benefit to have a relationship with a booking agency. I mean, you mentioned Rolla. You know, I'm sure that you would have loved to have had that when you set up your tour, to have somebody go do that.
Absolutely.
Would be nice. And so you definitely want to get a place where you can leverage those services, but you want to make sure that when you actually engage with them, that you're ready. And we'll ask that question of the agents when we come up, that you really have your game plan together. Like Eli was saying, when they decided to go out on the road, they did so knowing that they're already bursting at the seams locally at their shows, so they had some kind of a model that could be then replicated. Have your promo materials together. You know, make sure you're at your strongest. It's like poker. Start with a strong hand, so when you do play, you have the best chance of winning.
Also, too, if you look at it as like a family, like we want to work with people, and when you work with them, you become very close, and you want to make sure that if you do bring anyone on to your team, that you consider them in that regard, because you're going to be working.
That they consider you in that way, because we mentioned at the beginning, anyone will take your money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But, make sure it's somebody that you trust, and sometimes it's just waiting for the right opportunity. We've wanted certain things over time, and you just kind of put it out there until the right opportunity lands for you.
And don't be afraid to turn down an offer that doesn't look good. We've had a couple offers that just felt like it would be constricting and that it wouldn't be good for us. And so it's okay to wait for the right person to fill that role.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Hey, we're going to switch gears here. Give it up for our first round of panelists here. Man, I appreciate you guys sharing your expertise. They'll be around. I will. All right. So we've heard from the musicians, and now we're going to switch gears to the it's all a business, but we're calling these the biz folks, and so we got a couple of great ones today. I want to welcome Sid Kallstrom and Becky Johnson up here, wherever you guys are. Hey, Sid. Sid is with Blue Sun Entertainment, and I'll have him tell you a little bit about what he does. And Becky Johnson with Sterling Talent, and so they. Where did you guys go? Oh, there you go. Come on out, you guys. Don't be shy. So I'm going to start with you, Becky. Just give the audience a bit of perspective. I mean, you have been a force of nature in booking for quite some time here locally, and just give them a little sense of what your sphere is here.
Well, first of all, thanks for the compliment. That's really nice. I started out as an entertainer myself, and I've been enjoying listening to the stories about touring from the people who were up here, because boy, has the business changed since I was doing those things a long time ago. But eventually, I had to stop being on the road. I had a babysitter that would go with me, and I had my kids. If you can believe that, try touring with children. And anyway, had to stop. So I started performing around Portland, Pacific Northwest. We kind of did circuits. And so I did things like hotel chains, Sun River, Sun Valley, just all over the place. And then eventually I had to really think about how many more years can I be on the road like this? And Sterling Talent was born. So that was 1982, I think. I know. Don't say whoa so loud. So initially, I started out booking clubs, all the things I was familiar with, the kinds of places I worked. And then got more into corporate entertainment because there was more money in it. And as you know, it's really hard. Even now, I don't really book clubs just because I can't take a commission out of a hamburger and a beer. You just can't do it. And so most of my current work is done with concert series. We do, I think, 11 or 12 summer concert series. We do some festivals. I still do some corporate business. I've held on to some for 20 years or more that I still work with. We work with Hood to Coast. We work with several entities that we've really formed a good relationship with, and so they know that I understand what they're always looking for. But here I am, and I don't know how long I've been working with Jason. I'm trying to remember, but do you know?
7 years, I think. Yeah.
At least. So, we've done some joint ventures together, and it's always a kind of a changing animal. Each year something new comes up, and At this point, I'm finding all of the information that I've just been listening to fascinating, because from a booker standpoint, it's always good to really hear how you are perceiving your experience. And for me, I like to know that I am trying to do something that will help enlighten some of you so that you understand how to go about looking for some of the kinds of things that I book. And of course, I'm always looking for new ideas, new entertainment, whatever the latest, greatest, newest band is. But generally, I've just kind of touched in a lot of different areas. Not really as much club work for the last, at least, I would say, 20 years, probably.
And we have a good contrast up here, right? Because Sid, I actually got to kind of check out Sid, as I noticed that a lot of the artists on his roster were touring all over the place. I'm thinking, this guy knows how to set up a tour. So Sid, tell him a little bit about your background and what you're doing with Blue Sun Entertainment.
Sure. My parents took me to my first Grateful Dead show when I was 4, 1981. So I went to 200 Grateful Dead shows after that, and until 1995 when Jerry Garcia died. And so there's something about live performance, live music that's in my blood. I worked as with a band from a group of friends in Sacramento, formed a band. They asked me to do as much as I could. I was like the organized guy. They were the musicians. So basically, as a hobby in the mid-2000s, I worked as their manager, I would say, because I kind of oversaw all the workings of the operation. And then in 2012, I was laid off from a job that I had at the time. And I was like, wow, I really like booking tours. I really like working with bands, musicians, giving them a platform for their creativity. And so 2012, I worked for an agency out of Bend for a year. And in 2013, I started my own company. And currently, I have 3 agents, 14 clients. All that fluctuates a little bit all the time. And yeah, I set up tours all over the United States. And I have my first client going to Europe in September of this year. So
excellent. Well, I'm gonna actually start with this question because I asked it of the bands as well. Sid, when is the right time for an artist? When is an artist ready to go out on tour? You know, I'm trying to decide if I'm going to go out. How do I know I'm ready?
Well, I think Eli was accurate in what he said. Once you feel regionally that things have progressed and that you've been able to build on what you do locally, it's twofold. What Eli said as a musician is it gives him the confidence, or the band the confidence, to be able to take that on the road and expand on what you're doing locally. But the business side of that is that it gives you the opportunity to go and break even on the road, or go and make a little bit of money, or go and lose a little bit of money, depending upon the context of the situation, and be able to come back home and make money. You should be able to like go into 3 to 5 markets within your region and sell 100, 150, 200 tickets, ideally in your home market more than that. Once you're seeing that level of success, I would say it's a good time to branch out. And then there's, differing ways that you can approach that.
I don't want to lose track of Andre Middleton's question either about touring circuits. Are there sort of circuits out there to be tapped into that?
Yeah, one of the resources that I would say you should use is Indie on the Move. They have made it a paid platform at this point, but Indie on the Move is a really good database on the cheaper side of things, where you can go in and you can search by city, you can search by state. There's all sorts of postings from different venues that's looking for a support act, other bands that are looking for a support act, and so it's a really good networking tool for DIY musicians or people that are looking to do it on their own. The other thing about Indie on the Move is that, what is the other thing about Indie on the Move? What was I going to say? Oh, shoot. I don't know.
Sounds a lot like Indiana Jones.
Polestar. Polestar is the other resource, but it's a little bit more expensive. And, it's a bigger conglomerate. I would say that Polestar, if you're like really, really looking to make the next step, or if you're a person in my shoes that's looking to expand, say, into an agency or do more work with more clients, then Polestar is maybe the way to go. Indie on the Move, I remember my thought. It also functions like Wikipedia. So if I go in and I see that Doug Fur, the talent buyer for Doug Fur, has changed, I can submit a correction to Indie on the Move, and they will update it in real time. So it's ideally a platform where agents musicians, everyone that's using it is also keeping it up to date as well.
Becky, we have talked about this ad nauseum, but I think it's really important for musicians to get a perspective on this. What makes a band bookable? And you know, I think as musicians, we get caught up in this. God, I can't get them to. I can't get this person to book me. I can't get them to return my email, my call. You know, but there's a reason for that. So I want to start with at the root level. You know, because I think it's pretty much the same answer for any booking. What is it that makes a band attractive to any type of client or venue?
Well, I don't think it's just one thing. So you have to look at it from many different levels. So to begin with, obviously, if you have talent, that's going to get people to notice. So, you know, if you're a booking person like myself, you're constantly getting bombarded with artists sending you information, sending you video clips, sending you emails saying that they would like to work at XYZ festival or one of the things that I book. And so the first thing that I would do is hopefully they have sent me a link to some actual live footage so that I can get an idea, you know, what they sound like, what they look like. And believe it or not, the letter that they send me in the first place also, with me, it really counts.
Check your grammar.
Yeah. And not even just grammar, but, you know, for instance, if you're in my position and you get an email, and I get these all the time, someone just will send me a link and say, check it out, and if you're interested, call me. And, you know, delete. Yeah. Versus a lot of times I'll get a really nice email from a new artist that I'm not familiar with, and they will give me a little bit of background on themselves. They will tell me where they've been playing. Maybe they haven't been playing that much and they're brand new and they just kind of want to get their feet wet in the Portland market. And they'll send me footage, they'll send me a picture, they'll send me whatever they have. But I can tell by that letter a lot of times how serious they are about it. You know, and to answer, I don't want to get myself too far off your question, but I look for a number of things. So talent certainly counts. I look for someone that has a good idea what their market is, because you have to know that someone that would come to me might be looking for a certain type of work. But if you came to me, I wouldn't be able to help with the kinds of things that Sid books. That's not really my territory. So different bookers handle different types of bookings. And you have to kind of know what it is you're going for and what that agent that you're trying to contact does. And so do your homework, you know, try and do a little homework and find out about who it is you're contacting. I will say that if you happen to really have your act together and you have a great EPK, that's impressive. You know, that's helpful because really I'm a salesperson. So if you come to me and I love your product, and that's what you are. Your band is a product, and I have to be able to market it. If you have something really organized and concise and professional that I can use to send my clients, that makes a big difference. It makes my job a lot easier. And eventually, you know, when you're trying to book a number of things all at one time, I may find a band, I may love your band and think that musically you're just awesome. But if I have to do all the work on my end, you know, to try and put something together that I can send my clients, I don't have time to do that very often at all. So the more you do, the more organized, the more professional, the more polished your electronic press kit is. You know, and I also want to say you don't have to spend a ton of money paying someone to do this fancy, shiny video of your band. It used to be that people wanted that. Now they're not asking me for that. What they prefer is, can't you show me some live footage and how they work with an audience? So, you know, at least initially, when you're first getting going, have someone film, you know, even, I don't care if it's an iPhone, if it's good quality, you know, get some live footage and something that you can share so that we know what to expect. Another thing I look for that's really important is I have to be able to have good communication with you. I have to know that you're willing to take constructive criticism. So if you say to me, I want to work the festival that you're booking, and you've got the right sound, but it's not quite what I'm looking for, or you don't have quite the right song list, I have to be able to have a really open communication with you and know that you're willing to kind of tweak things a little bit to make your show right for my buyer. So basically, professional attitude. One thing that turns me off is if someone is kind of using the music business as an excuse to party and still get paid. I want people coming to me. I mean, seriously, I want people who are like the people that were on stage a few minutes ago. You can tell. I mean, they're not getting rich right now doing their music, but they're passionate about it. They're full of passion. They love music. They love the rehearsals. They love all of the things that they have to do to live that life. I want that. I want someone that really is serious about it, because if you really are in love with what you're doing and you have some talent, and you have a little bit of a business head, and you know enough to connect with people like Sid or like Jason, who are going to help you go further in your career, you've got a good chance at doing something with it.
Sid, I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but I want to. There are a couple of things that came to mind. There's just like little house cleaning things, like a checklist of things, like of do's and don'ts kind of stuff when you're reaching out to agents. Just to keep in mind. One of them is that just in general as a band, there's a certain minimum thing or an act in any kind. There are a couple of things that should be publicly accessible so that we don't have to go chasing them down. One of them is a high-res promo photo, right? And just remember that train tracks and warehouse, it's all been done. So go somewhere else for your photos.
Don't stand up against a brick wall with a bunch of foliage behind you so that you can barely pick out the band members.
You don't need a lot of them, but one really good pro image is really helpful. The other one is your stage plot and input list. Man, there's nothing more than a pain in the ass than trying to hunt down things from bands. So make sure that the things that every venue and every booker needs, help me help you. It's the Jerry Maguire thing. It's like you can give me the tools I need to promote your band or to help you be successful. The other one I'd be cautious of is Facebook Messenger and texting. And every agent is going to have a different perspective on this, but imagine that you're one of us who is pelted by inquiries all day long, and I'm in there trying
all night long, too.
All night long, yeah, especially lately. And your messenger is, you can't shut that thing off, you know what I mean? And so it's really frustrating because you're putting an agent in a really difficult position when you send them a message on Facebook. I'm an asshole if I don't respond. I don't have time to respond to you on Facebook, and I don't have time to get into a conversation. You have to realize, too, that you're one act of a bazillion. That's really an exaggeration, but you're one act of a whole bunch that any particular business entity has to deal with. And so the easier you can be to work with and the more fluid you can be to work with, the better. Let's talk. I want to get back to touring for a second, Sid. You've obviously booked a lot of tours. I'm wondering, if you're looking at the anatomy of a successful tour, what is it that really makes a band have a successful tour? I mean, you've gone to all this effort to book them, right? They've gotten to that point, but then they hit the road, right? The people who are really making those work for them, what are the attributes of the band and what they're doing that make them successful on tour?
Well, yeah, I would piggyback off of what Betsy was saying, and that's, Becky, excuse me. And it actually follows a question that came earlier about agents being reputable. I mean, one of the things that I'm looking for as well is whether the band is reputable, and organization is such an important thing. So you talked about it earlier, advancing the shows. The shows are going to go well if you continue the dialogue, much like they talked about earlier. Make sure that there's ongoing dialogue with the venue. As soon as the agent sends a contract, there's an immediate follow-up. When are we going to announce the date? I'm going to get you promo materials, yada, yada, yada. So organization is so key. And what I always say to my clients is, if you do everything right leading up to a show, the venue will have you back. If it's your first time in the room on a Tuesday night and 17 people show up, as long as you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's leading up to the performance, the venue will have you back. As long as the music is good.
That's probably the qualifier for everything.
For everything
And
across
it's also,
the board.
by the way, 99% of the reason why I hate to say it, why musicians fail is that the product isn't as good as it should be. It's hard to hear, but it is the reality of it. There are very few amazing artists wallowing in obscurity. Anyway, sorry. I didn't
For
mean to
sure,
interrupt you.
for sure. So do all the necessary things leading up to the show, and you're going to get asked back. Promoters will help. Venue buyers will help as long as you do the right things, as long as you're organized. Successes come in different ways, right? I mean, it depends on how the tour is set up. It depends on what the strategic approach is. One of the things I would mention is, as an agent, it's curious to me that Brass Tacks went from Portland, Oregon to North Carolina because there's all sorts of territory in between that isn't covered. So how do you get from point A to point Z and make that successful? I would want to know like what the strategy is within that. And I'm also, when I'm setting up the first tour, I'm thinking about what is the second tour. So ideally on a first tour or a first run of dates or whatever the case may be, I'm trying to find anchor gigs. I'm looking for festival plays, concert series, built-in crowds like it was discussed earlier, where you can take that experience and build on it. So if you get a festival in Portland, or let's say Seattle, outside of Portland, you want to always be thinking about what is the follow-up play. You know, we're going to go and play this festival. We're going to go and play this concert series. There's going to be thousands of people there. What are we going to do to make an impact on that play? But we're also going to have the next show set up so that the idea is that if we can gain 200 fans from this larger performance, they'll come to the follow-up show. And so, you know, you're basing success off of that. Where are the numbers at? You know, if you sold 30 tickets on your first play, did you sell 50 to 60 tickets on your second play? And of course, you're always looking at financials. You know, how much are we making on the weekends versus weekdays, and how does that fit into the larger scope of the situation?
One of the things I track for a lot of my bands and certain venues in particular, I track revenue per attendee. So you know, if you engage I mean, some venues won't give you this information, but a lot of them will. If they understand, like, hey, I'm curious to know, like, how much for all the, you know, let's say there were 17 people, but how much food and beverage did they drink while they were there? Because those are things you look at. You know, hey, you can be a potent band if the people you attract spend a lot of money. I know the jam bands, for example, they spend a ton of money on food and beverage, and so they end up, you know, when it comes to tours, it can be a little bit easier to book than, you know, singer-songwriters who people maybe are just sort of sitting there and, you know, I mean, it's a great show, but they're not spending any money at the venue. So, yeah, question.
Of course, excuse me. Hey, my name is Laura Storm. I have a question regarding contracts. When you're kind of bringing it back to more the do-it-yourself, you're booking your first tour. Do you use the same kind of template of contract for all, like across all the venues? And how do you approach asking for the amount that you think you need from the venue?
Well, they're both good questions.
Yeah, those are great questions. When I started out, I used two different contracts. I had a private event contract, and I had a venue-based contract. The reason that I did that is because a lot of the people that book private parties aren't necessarily in the music business world, and so it's kind of a different thing. I do use a contracting software now. If it's anybody in my vein that's like looking to expand on the booking side of things, you have to have a contracting software. It's super easy for the client, and it's super easy for you.
What do you use?
I use Tempo. It used to be Calitech, but I use Tempo now. Sorry, yep, Tempo. Everything is housed there. You can generate itineraries. You know, everything is just like filling in the cells. It remembers all the venues that you book and promoters that you use and that type of thing. So it's a very easy tool. For me as an agency, of course, I'm dealing with multiple clients, multiple dates. So that, you know, could differ. I think if you're just starting out, I would say that you go with what you feel and you don't reinvent the wheel. You just make sure that you have something on paper that's agreed upon. The funny thing with contracts is if you have a $500 to $1,000 gig and the promoter decides not to pay you, are you going to put your attorney that you have to pay $2,000 an hour on that $500 gig? So part of the contracting process and part of making sure that the shows go off without a hitch is the communication that I referred to earlier. If you just abandon the conversation altogether and you show up for the show and the promoter hasn't sold any tickets and he's like, sorry, I'm not going to pay you, he or she, I'm not going to pay you, you could be out that money. It's happened to me in the past, and it's obviously a bummer, but it's just a fact of the matter. So you should contract everything, and I would say that, again, the communication leading up to things is key. And in terms of having one contract or two, I think you could go either way until you're into like a really serious formal situation.
And I would definitely say, do not go out without a contract. I mean, I harp at that at people all the time about that, because even if something happens and you don't feel like you want to pay an exorbitant attorney to fight it for you, the little details, it should be very detailed. You should have on there what the agreed upon time is that you're going to be performing. You should have any specifics that the buyer, each buyer sometimes will have little things that they request, like we don't want you to take a break for at least 60 minutes or whatever it may be, but have every detail that you possibly can on that paperwork. And if nothing else, it will save you a lot of aggravation when you get to the gig. No one's going to argue with you if you've got everything signed. But I was told I was playing from 7 to 10. You have to have that. And people that don't take that step and do contracts oftentimes are very disappointed when they get to the gig.
Right on point. Music Portland has these sitting over there. It says, if you have sex, you use protection. Look at me, it's quiet. You use protection. Now you're listening now. If you have a gig, use a contract. Or how not to get screwed. All right, pick this up. There, these are over at the table. Trust me, it'll be worth it. So good information. The other half of the question was about asking for money. How do you set your price, man? What is that? How do I get paid at these things, right? How much am I worth? You guys want to?
Yeah, that's the age-old question, huh?
That's the $1 question.
Totally. So just real quick, if you want to send me an email for my contract template that I used to use, I don't mind sharing it with you or sending it across to you. Don't reinvent the wheel. Those things are accessible online, and like I said, if you email me, I can send it to you. Value. So, value is somewhat related to how many tickets you can sell in a given market. I would say that that's the first way to answer that question. So if you're in Portland and you can sell out Doug Fir, on a $12, $15 ticket or something along those lines, you're probably in about a $3,000 value range. There's differing factors though. If you want to get on a bigger festival, if you want to be on Waterfront Blues Fest, and you haven't played the event in the past, and you sell 150 to 300 tickets, you're going to want to take a little bit less money because you're going to want to put yourself in front of larger audiences. If it's a smaller, more community-based festival, then I would say that the value should pretty much remain the same. And partly, I would say that when for me looking at a tour, when looking at something larger, like if it's a client that's in their home region, I don't really vary too much from where their value is. As you branch out and you get farther away from home, you have to fill the calendar. So you have to look at a particular situation, and I think you have to judge it on its own. Does the venue have a built-in crowd? If so, then let's try to set up a free show, $500 to $750 guarantee on a Thursday night, and you try to get as many people through the door as possible drinking alcohol. If you're going into San Francisco and you've had good shows in the past, then you can take a door deal, a favorable door deal, 70, 80%, and ideally you're looking to sell 200 tickets, $15 a head, and you've got some percentage-based system. Value is tricky because as an agent, I have to try to read, when an inquiry comes in, I have to try to read the situation. And obviously I have to try to maximize on the situation, but at the same time, you don't ever want to really lie or bend the truth too much. If you tell somebody, oh yeah, we're selling 300 tickets in San Francisco, and you go in and you sell 17 tickets, you look like a fool. So, and you don't ever, the thing is you need lasting relationships in this business. It's all about the relationship. one promoter is going to help you along the way. And one of the things that I do when looking at touring is I look for promoters that have venues of varying size. So they can start you out in the 150 to 200 cap room. They'll build you through that room, and they'll move you to the 500 cap room, and then they'll move you to the 1,000 capacity room. So ideally, you're looking for promoters that can build you up. Club dates are also different than festivals. There's more money wrapped into festivals. There's more money wrapped into concert series. So your ability to make more money on those performances is there. When looking at club dates, you have to play the game. You have to build a bill, a 3-band bill that's favorable to the venue. You have to work with them to secure the gig. And so because of that, you have to loosen your reins a little bit. You have to loosen and not be so adamant about the value. Again, I think it relates to what your value is in the market in terms of ticket sales, but it varies depending upon the situation.
Follow-up. You mentioned that, I know you threw out a random number being $3,000 for a venue this size. Is that for the entire bill, or is that just for the headline?
Well, so I say that in terms of if I have a band that is going to come into Doug Fir and sell out Doug Fir, I'm probably looking at somewhere. Ticket price is what will lead the promoter to a differing percentage. So if your ticket price is only 8 to 10, then the venue is going to take a larger percentage. You're probably going to be in more of like a 60% range with the venue. If your ticket price is up around 12 or 15, 14, 16, then you're probably in like a 70 to 75% range. And then if your ticket price is higher, then the deal structure would probably be like 70% on the front end, but you might be able to revert the deal to like say 80% at sellout. Again, every situation is different, but those are general parameters, and I'm using Doug Fir as an example. So the total take, I would say, would be somewhere in like the $3,200 to $3,500 range, and then you would pay out support, so it'd be inclusive of support. And again, this is, hopefully you don't go back to the buyer and say, hey man, this guy told me that Doug Fir, this is what I'm going to get. Yeah. But I am giving you kind of a standardized range, and it depends, as you get to a bigger room, there's a higher level of expense for security, for bar staff, all those types of things. So the level of expense is going to go up. So it's funny. You think that you get a better deal if you go to the Crystal Ballroom, but really you get a worse deal when you go to the Crystal Ballroom. It's just that you sell more tickets at a higher ticket price. So in terms of answering your question directly, I would say inclusive of support, the total door take is probably going to be somewhere between $3,000 to $3,500, and the bands would be responsible for paying out the other bands.
There's also a huge variable in terms of whether you're coming in as the promoter or whether the venue is the promoter. Yes. If the venue is the promoter, they're going to take a percentage split, right? And usually pretty significant unless you're an established promoter. But as a band, sometimes it makes sense, especially if you have a large following in a market, just to rent the venue. You'll make a lot more money that way if you know you can fill it. The nice thing about the split deal is that you don't have any risk. The risk is essentially shared between you and the venue, but at the end of the day, the venue is really taking the risk. That's why a lot of venues, you'll see these deals, they seem ridiculous at face value until you really think about it. They're like, okay, the first X goes to the venue before you see a dime. Right? And the reason that happens is because the venue wants to make sure that they get all their expenses covered. Then from there you get a split. But they're also spending money on promotion and so on and so forth, and they want to make a profit. So
I wanted to add, in my kind of bookings, we don't deal with tickets. So it's very different from what Sid does. So for instance, if you wanted to get into one of the summer concert series or one of the festivals that I work with, they're not looking at ticket prices. It's usually free to the public. So then how do you value, what it is that you should be making? And for instance, let's just start with the concert series. What they're looking for is how many bodies can you get into the park, because they want their sponsors to be happy. So if you have a village of people that follow you no matter where you play, and you can bring 4,000 people into a park, obviously, you're going to value yourself higher. You're going to ask for more money. If you are brand new and you haven't done this kind of work before, but you feel like you're ready and want to try some of those kinds of engagements, I would offer to do it for almost nothing if it's a really good audience. As Sid was saying, if you can get out in front of several thousand people and share your music with them and earn some new fans and get them to sign up on your Facebook page and get your social media thing happening, it's worth doing it for almost nothing. But the more you build your village, the more people that you have that follow you, the more money you'll probably get.
That's a really, I say this every single session we do this, and I'm going to say it again because it is so important, because I am a musician myself. I understand this mentality. The mentality is, I got to get gigs, I got to get gigs, I got to get gigs, right? The mentality should be, I got to get fans, I got to get fans, I got to get fans. The greatest joy in my life personally as a musician is that I've gotten enough leverage with my fan base that I can pretty much name my price. And Becky will tell you this. It's an awesome negotiating position, because you're just like, I'm just not going to do it, if it's not the right price. And there's only one way to do it, and that's if you have the fan base. So I always encourage folks to shift your mentality and make fan building as important, at least, if not more important, than actually getting gigs. Another thing, two things that have absolutely no bearing on what your band gets paid most of the time. One, how many members you have. It doesn't matter, right? You know what else doesn't matter? How long you've been playing, right? You know what else we don't care about? No offense to the union, but it doesn't matter to the buyer, whether it's the union rate is blah, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? It doesn't work like that. So that's just the reality of the situation. Question.
Yeah, cycling back to sort of the beginning of the process, reaching out over email. I think everybody who's tried to book a show and sends out an email don't always get a response back. So what do you like to see for the follow-up email? Do you prefer to have the original email along with the follow-up? Do you summarize the original email? How do you kind of stack the odds of getting a response?
You're talking about reaching out to a venue?
Yeah, or you personally, when you receive an email, do you always respond immediately? How do you?
I try to respond immediately, even if I'm not interested. I try to respond to everybody. That's been something that I've tried to do from the beginning. I think it's important as an agent. When I reach out to buyers countless times and I don't get a response, it's super frustrating. I'd rather hear "I hate your band" than nothing at all. So. Or me. Most of the time, they probably hate me more than my band. Yeah, interesting. Well, so as an agent reaching out to venues, I think it's important to try to articulate in a succinct way what your band does in that market, what types of cool things your band does in general, and of course, like Jason said, having that one piece of content to really sell the buyer on the opposite end if they're not familiar with the act is important. In terms of a follow-up, follow-up is like, hey, did you get an opportunity to check out my prior email? And for me, again, I try to just keep everything as succinct as possible, but also try to convey as much information as possible. So my initial inquiry is normally more lengthy than a follow-up. If I don't get somebody on the first 2 emails, maybe 3, I always try to find a phone number. I always try to call the venue, which I would even urge to do so ahead of time. If you have a phone number, call. Just like what you were mentioning about Facebook. I mean, maybe I'm a dinosaur, but it's crazy to me that people use Facebook as a means of business communication. It's a social networking platform. I don't have Facebook Messenger on my phone, so I could care less about Facebook.
It's a nightmare for agents, I'll tell you this.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
So get on a call with somebody, and maybe that's, I don't know, again, I'm a dinosaur, maybe that's an old way of thinking, but number one, tone and your emotion and the way that you want to say things gets misconstrued when you write a note. And so if you can get on the phone and talk with a buyer directly, great. And you're always going to be able, I think, to dig into it a little bit deeper by taking that form of communication. In terms of getting in touch with, you want to take that one? In terms of getting in touch with people like
Well, first of all, if you have sent me an email, I always try to respond to all of them. I don't always do it by the next day because, and I'm not exaggerating, I never have less than 5,000 emails in my inbox, and it's constantly, like even before I came here, I was constantly trying to go through them, and pick out the ones that I had not yet gotten back to. So if you've sent one email out to an agent and they haven't responded immediately, it could possibly be just that they have a lot on their plate at that moment. So don't feel bad about trying again a second time. Whether you attach your original email to it, I kind of like that when people do that, and that way I can kind of refresh my memory what it is that you're wanting to have me know about. I would also say the one thing not to do, and I do get this more often than I would like, people get really aggressive about, when you don't immediately respond to them, and then they get defensive and aggressive, and that turns me off immediately, because that tells me a little bit about what you might be like to work with, should I decide I'm even interested in booking it. So
being right does not get you a gig.
Right. Exactly. But you know what? Sometimes you do have to be a little bit persistent. We all have super busy schedules. So, if you get passed over the first time that you've sent an email, it's not necessarily because we don't think you have value or we're not interested in talking to you. So I would encourage you to go ahead and try again. And the other thing, and this is just a personal thing, and I know it's sort of the new way of doing things. Everybody's got their websites and so forth, but I really like it when you have a phone number. And not everybody does. That is one of my big frustrations. It's like something comes in really fast and I need to get hold of somebody, and I know that there's a band that would just be perfect for this spot, and I send emails because there's no phone number. I look everywhere and can't find one. And then it takes them like a few days to get back to me. By the time they respond to the email, I've already booked it because my client's in a big hurry. So just a little personal thing from me is I think it's really helpful if you can be contacted in more than one way.
I'm going to curmudgeon this for you. So I started my journey as a booker and a promoter as a musician, which I still am today primarily. And through that time, I started out actually much like these guys. I'm like, I'm going to respond to everything. And over time, I've like really gotten jaded about the process. And I'm about to give you all the reasons why. One, spam. So like people who literally have it, like I got all my buyers on an email list. I'm going to hit send and just going to come in, with frequency. It's like if the whole thing feels automated and unpersonal, like the one that comes in and looks like it went to everybody, even though on the one hand I'm like sympathetic, like yeah, you can't really do a personal message to 10,000 agents, but you shouldn't be doing that anyway because it's just like it's not that kind of a game. So I think keeping things personal and succinct is really helpful. Another one is that just because you were the opening act at a sold-out show does not mean you sold out that show. And we know that. So don't say you sold out a show if you weren't the headliner. You didn't. That's another one that drives me nuts. Another one is you go to, you're pitching a band, you're talking about how great you are, then I click on the link, and their calendar isn't current on the website. Or there's no bookings. I'm like, well, how hot can you be if you don't have any bands booked? It's okay if you don't have a lot of shows booked, but don't talk about how hot you are. You know what I mean? Like, don't let that be your angle. So just make sure that whatever you're saying up front matches what we're going to discover when we start checking you out.
Chris from Vortex here, and we did this panel once before, and maybe the best piece of advice that we got, I believe it was from Eric Gerber, was he said, if you don't have a date, he doesn't have anything to work with. So, and this goes for reaching out to press or a booker or anyone. If you don't have all the information already in that email, and then we have to turn around and email you back to ask questions, we're probably not going to do that because we don't have the time to do that. It's going to end up, getting deleted or being like, oh, I'll get back to that. But, like Jason just said, it's like the chances of getting back to that, start to, fade away at that point. So, really it's being super, super clear about what you're asking for, and like Eric Gerber said, he's like, I will give you a response immediately if you have the exact date you want, because I can look at that and I can give a yes or no to that kind of thing.
Well, also a lot of it depends on the type of band you are too. In the working band business and the sort of the cover, the tribute bands and type of things, you can usually get away a little bit more with not having a date because it's more like, hey, I'm just looking to be in consideration for these types of gigs as they go. But if you're setting up tours and you're reaching out to a venue booker, yeah, they're just looking at a spreadsheet with dates to fill, so it really helps, right?
I'm just real quick.
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to reiterate patience, because in our world, you've got to be patient and you've got to be persistent, and it's hard to do both. But like, be patient. We're all involved in 17 different things. You know, I'm co-producing a festival in Ohio in June. That's a whole different story. But there's going to be a 2-week process leading up to it where I'm not going to touch any booking related work, and then I'll be taking a week after it where I won't be touching any work. So like, you know, if something comes into my inbox during that time, I'll have an automated response set up, but it probably won't be for a couple, 3 weeks after that experience where I will get back to those things. So, you know, like you said, it's not that we're ignoring you. It's just that a lot of times we're splintered and we're doing this type of thing while we're doing that type of thing, and it takes us a little bit of time to catch up in differing times of the year. It's very seasonal, our work, even though it doesn't seem like it would be. It is very seasonal.
I got to get this out. Sorry. Here's another one that drives me nuts. If you are trying to get a gig somewhere, don't comment with your band on the promotion for another show. Hey, you know what would be great with the show? My band too. And you're just like, dude, I'm promoting this show. Why are you hitting me up for bookings as a promoter on my promotion thing? So really be careful about how you comment on stuff, because it's really obnoxious. Or you know, promoting your show, like, I can't make it. I got my show at blah, 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 3 o'clock. It's like, no. You don't, you know, you can say, hey, I can't make it, I got a gig, but don't promote your concert on somebody else's concert. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I don't know how many of you out there are brand new at this, or how many are veterans and have been, you know, doing bookings for a long time. But one thing that I don't mind when a musician will ask me, I would really like to play that Lake Oswego concert series. What are you looking for? You know, what would make me more marketable? You know, agents are people too, so, you know, you can have conversations and try to discover what it is that those buyers are looking for. You know, ask lots of questions and get out there and see other bands that are in the same genre of what you play, and see the kinds of places they're playing. And then if you're not getting those gigs, you know, don't be afraid to start conversations and network and ask questions. And I really respect that when a band comes to me and says, how can I make myself more marketable and, you know, make our band somebody that you would call for some of the engagements that you work on. So, you know, start those conversations. There's nothing wrong with that.
Hey guys, thanks so much for sharing. I'm Rich Layton, and I have a question, but I wanted to share a negotiating strategy that's really been working for me. And it's when somebody says, how much do you charge? And I say, well, we never want to price ourselves out of a good time, but I don't want to leave money on the table. And then, you know, we kind of would like to be paid at the same level of our contemporaries, you know, doing the same. And I usually have some names of bands that I can use. And I had to use that strategy last week, and I split the difference on the range, and the booker came back at the high end. So it's like, it worked. So.
Well, another thing along those lines, too, is you can also do it like, well, we typically earn X to X.
Yeah.
How does that fit with your budget?
Yeah,
that's always not
too.
good.
Yeah, good one too. My question is, from a percentage standpoint, what are your respective agencies in terms of tribute and then variety cover and then original artist? And when I say original artist, I mean people that are trying to be commercially, you know, throw covers in and all that stuff too. Thanks.
In terms of the artists that I have on my roster, is that?
Well, no, I mean just in terms of the if 100% of your booking, how would you divide it up by tribute, variety cover, and original artist?
I'm all original artist
Okay.
on my roster. Yep.
Great.
Well, I'm not, and you know, it's changed over the years. So before I got into so many festivals and summer concert series, I really didn't use very many tribute artists. I did use original artists and a lot of cover bands that would do dance music. Now, however, I would say, gosh, Jason, what is the percentage of my tribute artists? I would say 45%, you know, maybe 50%, just because we do so much work together, and summer concert series like the tribute artists because they fill parks. You know, I mean, they tend to really get a lot of people out there. That having been said, yes, I do book original artists. for my series, it tends to be original artists that have a pretty good following. So they've built up their following and they can still get the people into the parks. That is what my buyers want. And as far as regular cover bands, other types of music, I would say probably, again, maybe 45%, something like that. And it changes from season to season too. So, like once we get out of the summer booking series, it tends to really change a lot. And then we're looking at holiday, corporate holiday parties, private events, things of that sort. So I would say the summertime is more the tribute acts. But again, it all comes down to one thing. It's how are the sponsors going to be happy? They're going to be happy if lots of people attend these events. And so you could be an original artist, and if you can fill those parks, everyone's going to be happy. So it's more about that than it is the type of music.
I'm thinking of a specific series that we're working on together that has 10 dates, and 3 of them are original bands, I think, and I think maybe 3 of them are straight up cover bands, and 4 of them are tribute bands, is about how that shakes out. Yes.
Hi, April Krubel with Girl Can't Help It and Bridgetown Get Down. Hi. I am just curious about the casino market, because that's been sort of a big part of our area lately, and just kind of the do's and don'ts of getting in there. Are they worth it? What kind of questions do you ask when you're booking them?
I deal with a lot of casinos. Boy, I gotta be careful with this. First of all, not all casino dates are created equal. This is an important distinction because most casinos have a lounge area and then they have like a concert venue. Lounge area, oftentimes those are, you'll pay both nights. So like a Friday and a Saturday. And, those gigs are, I would call them, I prefer to look at them as stepping stones, which is they're good to get early on, but you don't want to live there because they tend to max out at a rate. And because the venues casinos are weird because think about how they make money. Like, do they really want people watching the band the whole time? Or they want them gambling? So the ideal thing for a casino is to have somebody who's going to draw a lot of people, entertain them for 60 to 90 minutes, and then get them back gambling. So the other thing about casinos is that they're very much, to me, they're the definition of assembly line booking. So, I know bands that do casinos, and sometimes once they get into that, it's hard to get out of it. The upshot is you can make a living doing casinos nonstop. It's just, I don't know, man, it can get kind of soul-sucking after a while. It depends. If you like casinos, that's cool, but, they tend to be really restrictive. You wait till you see a casino contract. First of all, you don't hand a casino your contract and say, sign this. You sign their contract, and then you got to watch for these like crazy. I'm gonna pick on the Elon A for a minute. I love it, great client. I book a ton of shows there each year, but the radius clause is like 120 miles for some insane amount of time, and I'm like, no, you can't. If you're a working band, you can't sign that. So, by the way, read those long contracts that you're signing because there are probably 2 things in there you're not aware of. One of them is a lot of them that require insurance, which I will tell you should just say, if you want insurance, I will get it, but I'm going to purchase a separate policy and you're going to pay for it. You shouldn't be having to eat insurance. It's the idea that a band has to carry insurance in this day and age is ridiculous. That's just my opinion. But you will get asked for it. You can purchase it as a one-off for like the event helper or something like that. Build that into your price. The other one is the radius clause. So just make sure you look at these things. I can tell you, most people sign these contracts without realizing that you've just signed up saying you have insurance that you really don't and that you're not going to play nearby when you really are. So most of the time when you sign those things and don't look at them, you're probably in violation.
And I want to add that more and more in the last 2 years specifically, more of my clients are asking for these different kinds of insurance policies. And I think that's going to eventually come to a head because how many of you carry liability insurance for your band? Anybody? Raise your hand. Yeah.
My bands play all kinds of stuff for a lot of money, and I don't carry liability insurance. I just buy it like a one-off because it's just so expensive. Yeah.
And see, what we do is we do have an umbrella policy on our liability insurance. And so if I'm booking one of your bands at an event, and I'm the one that is signing with that buyer, I can provide them with umbrella coverage with liability insurance. But if you were doing it one-on-one direct, and they asked you for that, that would probably end up being a different story.
If you do a gig at the Marriott downtown, you not only have to have insurance, you got to send them and we've had to do this before too with some city buyers. You have to get the insurance cards for the auto insurance cards for everybody in your band, right?
By the way, I was going to talk to you about that this next week.
I keep them on file, and so should you. Just get it all from your band. Oh, that's another thing. I think you guys both mentioned responsiveness, but in the booking process, this is key. Most of the time, we as booking agents are not most of the time, all the time, we are beholden to our clients, right? And unfortunately, most of the time, clients have unreasonable expectations about how quickly things are going to move. But guess what? If you don't respond in 24 hours, Moses Barrett will. Where are you, Moses?
Yes, he will.
And he's going to get the gig. So I'm just going to tell you right now, if your band is not set up to respond in 24 hours or less, fix that. It's a must. You don't, more than 24 hours, you are doing something wrong. Yes.
Oh, yes, thank you. Hi, I'm Corey Fox. I play with Pilot. We're like a pop R&B fusion. So I just wanted to thank you guys very much for being here. I'm personally getting a lot out of just hearing your perspectives and everyone who is already up here. My question is kind of general, but something that I'm kind of curious about, what do you guys look for? What would stand out in an email, a phone call, an interaction? What descriptive qualities would stand out? And if you're going through 5,000 emails, what are you looking for? What's something that might capture your eye?
Sid, you want to start on that one?
Yeah, if I'm looking at an inquiry, again, I talk about succinctness in the email, just a general structure to the email, but really what I'm looking for in an inquiry is good songs. As an agent, I think that the band will last if they have good songs, and this business as a band is all about longevity. And so if you have good songs, those good songs will carry on. And so I'm looking really for more content, because if I sign a band, they're not going to be the ones communicating by and large. It's going to be me communicating. So I have my own ways of formulating things with what I do. I'm not necessarily looking for any catchphrases or anything like that. I'm just looking for good content, good songs, and a good idea of what the band has done up to this point.
And I would say, if you're asking about sending an email and what would get my attention, do you know what an elevator speech is? Have you ever heard of that? So if you went into an elevator and there was a big booker standing next to you and the door closes, you've got about 30 seconds to give him your elevator speech about what your product is, why it's good, just... So I would say Sid used the word succinct, and that is important. I mean, we don't want to get 3-page letters because we don't have time to go through all that. But in a couple paragraphs, you can tell me what it is that your band does. Maybe if you already have a work history, some of the highlights of places that you've played, and just describe to me what it is that the type of venue that you want to play, the type of, if you've been doing festivals, tell me about that. What festivals have you played for? Include a link with some live footage. And like Sid said, really, it is, in the end, it is about how good the music is. One example that comes to mind, we get so many promotional packages and inquiries from people, and they don't all fit the type of description that my clients are looking for. And a lot of them are really slick packages. They've been heavily produced. People have spent a lot of money doing fancy schmancy videos, all those things. And then we were out of town on a business meeting, and there was an open mic night. And I don't know what I expected. And I will tell you, I am discriminating. So especially when it comes to vocals, because that's what I knew. That's what I used to do. And so I'm always listening to new music thinking, go ahead, make me feel something, I dare you. Come on, grab me, make me really excited about it. And a lot of times I don't feel that. And here we are sitting in an open mic, and these young kids get on stage, and no experience whatsoever. The keyboard player was a senior in high school, and the two guys were, I think maybe one was 20, I don't remember, the other one was maybe 19. And they started playing, and the singer opened his mouth, and we were all sitting there with our mouths open. It's like all of a sudden I felt like I was watching greatness happen, something really amazing. It was from his soul. He just sang from his soul. And in fact, Moses, I think I sent you that video, didn't I? Yeah. It was really good. And so, you don't have to be all packaged up and highly professional and, if you've got talent, if you've really got the raw talent, if you're a good songwriter, if you're a good performer, we're usually willing to help you polish things up and, give you advice on how to help you. But in the end, it is about the music. Not everybody in the business has a lot of talent. So, you find different levels of talent. And so, and I will say too, in my experience, the one thing I have found is that initially people will come to me and they'll send me some video or we'll go see them. And I'll think, yeah, there's some talent there. It's not quite ready for the kind of thing that I book, but there's definitely some talent there. And I'll tell them, please stay in touch with me. And I've seen some of those people really develop into some amazing performers. There are bands out there right now that I work with that I first heard about maybe 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago, and they've come such a long way because they've taken constructive criticism. They're aware of what their competition is and what they're doing. They've studied the kinds of places that they want to play, and they make sure to ask lots of questions, what people are looking for, and bingo, they turn into this really marketable act that I can work with. So don't, if at first you don't succeed, don't stop. If you really believe that you've got that talent and you've got to just really persevere.
I'm going to answer this in two parts. So one is in terms of like the tone of the email and like what might, for me, what sort of incentivizes me to respond. I think, and it's been mentioned here before, but kind of the attitude that comes through. It is amazing how arrogant some of these emails come across. And you're just like, why would you take that tone? At the same time, you don't want to be too like, oh, shucks, humility, because you obviously want to put your best foot forward. So I think you want to have the tone of a realist. It's like, and so we're looking for like some evidence, so things that are scannable. So for example, like how you format it, taking the time to bold a couple of key words that you want to stand out actually really goes a long way. Bullet lists are a lot easier to read than big long paragraphs, things like that. So think about the scannability of it, the tone of the email that says, I'm professional, I have my act together. Here's some really quick evidence of that. And then when we get down to the actual, eventually it comes down to clicking on a video. And I use the example of our Beastie Boys tribute because they're awesome, and their average booking is $4,000 to $5,000 for a Beastie Boys tribute. And I have done this over the years with one 30-second video that I shot on my phone and nothing else. But there is one thing going on in that video, and it is the only thing that matters. The crowd is going nuts while the band is performing. That's it. Because as a buyer, think about this. This is a marketing axiom. I don't care what product you're selling. People will buy a product when they can visualize themselves using that product, and they're like, wow, I want that to be me. I want to have that in my situation. So, if you can create a situation where, great thing is if you're going to a summer concert buyer and you can show them a little clip from an outdoor concert where people are like interacting with the band, all of a sudden the buyer's like, aha, I can see that this works at a summer concert. But more importantly, Becky can go to her client and say, hey, see, look what happens when these guys play outdoors over the summer. So there's a long-winded answer to that, but yeah.
I'll add one more thing that I thought about while these guys were talking. It might be more relative to perspective management, but having goals set. I want to sell out Doug for in 18 months. I want to, go to Star Theater after that. I want to put the foundational blocks in place to get me through this smaller size room and get to the Wonder Ballroom, if speaking about Portland specifically. Having those types of goals and ideas in mind as a band first before coming to people that are going to represent you in that way is another good thing to have.
Got time for a few more questions, and I want to make sure we wrap up here in about 10 minutes so that we give you guys a little bit of networking time. I promised the venue we clear out of here by 3:30 so we can get things open up for the next show.
I am Cole with 40 Feet Tall. We're playing here in April. I guess my question is pretty specific, but what do you want to see in an EPK? Is it Sonic Big? Is it a spot on your website? We've been getting a lot of mixed messages on that. Yeah.
You answer that, because I'll tell you what, EPK is obsolete in my mind.
This is really different because we're in such different ends of the booking business that what I really need, he doesn't need at all. So, I find it really, really interesting. And what I look for is a really good high-res picture that can be used for posters and brochures and so forth. Some sort of bio, and most bands really, really have a hard time doing bios. It needs to be in a paragraph. I want to be able to read that and know what the flavor of your music is. Who it is, how big is the band? Just some really what do I want to say? If you sent me a bio that said, we're a 5-piece band originally from the Pacific Northwest, we like to play funk and soul, the important pieces of who you are, I want to see in that. Also, it helps to have a stage plot and any tech information. If you have audio, video that you can include in that, that's really helpful. Something that I can send my client. That's what it's for, really.
Whether or not a band has a stage plot, by the way, is immediately, to me, actually, it's one of the things I go to first. I'm like, if this band does not have a stage plot and input list available, they're probably not doing that much. That's actually my starting point. Even though you don't actually give it to the client to sell the band, as an agent, it's a good beacon for where the band is at. Totally. Yep.
I shouldn't have laughed at EPK, but in my world, when I'm pitching festivals and summer concert series and whatnot, I'm normally drafting emails that have multiple clients in one email. So I'm trying to give small tidbits on each band or each act and offer either the ability to hop on a call to articulate things a little bit further or to include links to those artists within that email. So that's really the format that I'm using on a general basis. But we do have what we call a blanket pitch list in our spreadsheets that essentially is an EPK. So I would say tour support for national clients. So if you've had any tour support for national clients, it's a great thing to include, and other concert series, festival performances that would fit in or be in line with what you have going on is another thing to include.
And I heard someone a minute ago say, can't you put that on your website? Yeah, you absolutely can. And should. If you can have a website where there are links and you can tell people if you want my high-res pictures, if you want our stage plot, any technical information, it's all on our website. That's great. That's great. That's very helpful.
The other thing, too, is it's kind of informative because you had mentioned you're getting mixed messages from the market in terms of where your demos and various things should be housed. And even among us, we have different things that we look for. And I think that kind of delivers the answer, which is that you might have, have a few of them in there and then so that there's some choices, as long as they're not like, again, bullet lists are golden. Because the other thing, too, is that, like the age of the booker and their level of, I do know, like I have clients who like work almost exclusively by text. It drives me nuts because when I'm the client, I hate working by text. But the reality is I have to do that with that client if I want to do business with them. So I think providing multiple options so that it's convenient for the person you're reaching out to is probably the way to go. A little bit of a hassle because you have to maintain all of them. But I think a lot of that's maintainable now through sort of super apps that allow you to do multiple postings at once.
Cool. Thank you.
Other questions here? I think what we're going to do so that we have time for network, and we got a good crowd here today. First of all, thank you guys so much for coming out today. Really appreciate that. Thank you to all of our panelists, you guys, so much, and all of our musician panelists as well. Our next, Chris, what's our next topic? Where are you? Young. Music licensing and sponsorship is going to be our next one. So this is number 2 of a 3-part series called Get Paid. So we're trying to do things that help you earn money as a musician. So this is an ongoing series. Join the PDX Music Business Forum online. It's a Facebook group. The best place to get information on all of this is Vortex Magazine. So just hit their website. All this stuff. We've got archives of videos thanks to Audio Globe. We've got archives of videos from past sessions. This one will be up there as well. So just use Vortex as your hub. And then also, please, please, please sign up for Music Portland. This is a really big deal, you guys. They're doing amazing things for us. I mean, just even in the first year, getting things like loading zones and helping to delay getting these awful placards on buildings that unmark them unfairly unsafe. We can only go up from here. They're highly engaged at the city level. So help spread the word about Music Portland. Get people signed up. There's no cost. It takes you a couple seconds. Once again, thank you guys so much for coming out. We got to be out of here by 3:30, but take a few minutes, hang out, network, and we'll see you next time.